Your program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the channel today, everyone. I'm Sarah Higdon. This is Transform to Freedom. So it's been a good week. Hope you had a good week. So this last weekend, I was in Orlando for the Young Americans for Liberty conference, which that was pretty fun. It was some great speakers, got some great, got to interact with some great politicians from across the country. And really seeing a lot of the young people that are really inspired to do the work in the movement. And it was just a really good event. Tulsi Gabbard spoke, Vivek Ramaswamy spoke, Dave Smith, Spike Cohen, Kennedy was there. And so it was it's a good event. It was my first time going, and so I was really happy. Me and Hannah Cox actually invited me to go with her, so I was super excited about that because we are pretty good friends. So that was fun. But just kind of jumping into the things of the weekend, there was some interesting stuff that happened. But I kind of want to bring, I like to start off the show, kind of bring up old news from stuff we've talked about before, updates to other news. So the first thing that really is crazy, and we're going back all the way back to the Trump assassination attempt, where the story changes day by day, and I really don't get it. So this is crazy because there's a new video. If you haven't seen this came out a few days ago, actually. So it's kind of old because we are running a little bit lag time behind here, but this is nuts. So this video drops, and you can actually see the shooter, and this is at like eye level. So think about this. Like, you would think that like Trump could have even seen this person moving from where he's at. Now Trump's obviously speaking, so he's not paying attention to what's actually going on off in the distance. He's paying attention to the crowd. He's looking at the chart. He's doing all that stuff. But thinking about like watching this, I mean, let's just play it.
Can we bring him up for a couple of minutes? The world will see a vibrant Republican Party.
That's insane to me because, again, eye level, you have Secret Service snipers up on a roof that actually are in an elevated position, so could easily see this guy moving. There's just, again, I don't want to go too deep into the rabbit hole here on YouTube, but there's just way too much stuff that seems so off about this. Like, I don't think that the Secret Service is that inept. The miscommunications between local law enforcements don't make a lot of sense. Like, that just doesn't explain like this. I mean, if he like army crawled all the way up to the position, it's a little bit different where you can actually see him moving across the roof to get into position. Like, you see somebody moving, and you can see in the video he's got what appears to be a gun. And if you're looking at it through a scope, you know it's a gun. The question really has to remain who gave the stand down order. But like, this took place what, a few weeks ago? I mean, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Yeah, about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And it seems like the media is trying to memory hold this like crazy. All they're talking about is Kamala. They're talking about everything else, and we still don't have answers on this, but they don't care to push for answers. It's like they are trying to get rid of this because they know that when people watched this, they got inspired to vote for Trump, and they can't keep this in the news. And so it's really peculiar. And honestly, do we even know what is going to happen with this? Like, do we know? I honestly, at this point, with it being the FBI who's leading the investigation on this, unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to know what actually happened, because it's the same organization who investigated the Vegas shooting, and we still don't know what happened. We don't have a motive. We don't have anything. We're not hearing anything about this guy, which also makes me think that, like, there was some stuff that was coming up, and it was I don't know if it was ever corroborated, but it was like, they were trying to say he was a registered Republican, but then I think that some of these social media stuff that they were talking about was possibly that he was very much, anti-Trump, not a Republican, very much pro-Biden. And so if that's the case, I mean, because what type of 21-year-old who doesn't seem to be so antisocial in the videos they actually have of him, what 21-year-old does not have social media these days? So there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't make sense. Like, when was his social media scrubbed? All this stuff, and I just don't think we don't have a motive 3 weeks later. Like, what is the FBI not telling us? I don't understand. So that's what's going on there. That's the latest news, the latest update, the latest video from the assassination attempt. Moving on to another quick story. So if you guys were on social media this weekend, and again, this actually happened, this was from the let me see. Does Dom actually? I don't even know if he shows this. No, doesn't. Okay. If you were watching social media, so you saw on, I want to say that was Thursday night. So it was from the Young Americans for Liberty conference. Kyle Rittenhouse met Ron Paul for the first time and was inspired, just like many of us are. I mean, I met Ron Paul once. Ron Paul is what inspired me into the liberty movement in the first place, kind of what opened my eyes early on. And so I was inspired, but Kyle said that he was still he posted on social media, "I'm still writing in Ron Paul." And from the right-wing Twitter had a complete meltdown. As you see, like, Dom is going to expose Kyle, because for anyone who's compromised by money during this pivotal time, nobody's paying Kyle to say this. If anything, it's the other way around, that he's being paid to push for Trump. He's being paid to push conservative ideals. He's being paid by the Republicans. If that was the case, the Libertarian Party is not, and the Liberty Movement is not going to pay him to write in Ron Paul. And the Democrats aren't either. They're not even looking at Kyle Rittenhouse. Okay, Kyle's not that much, but it's like they think because we supported him, because we, because our values protect, the Second Amendment and the right to defend yourself, and because conservatives think because we supported him through his legal troubles, which was the right thing to do, that we now own Kyle, that Kyle can't step out of line or else he gets canceled. He's no longer this, hero in their minds. In fact, they some people were saying he should be. Is it too late to go put him back in jail? And all I had to say about this, and it really is true, is that if you're actually out here attacking Kyle Rittenhouse because he has different political views than you, and not because he went through a rough situation that he should have never been put in the first place, and if he has a different political view than you, or, he's not voting for Trump, then you know what? You might be in a cult. Like, this is like cultish behavior. Like, you feel betrayed by Kyle because he says he wants to write in Ron Paul for president, and he's going to vote third party. I'm gonna put out a little secret right here. Voting third party is not voting for Kamala Harris because the person doesn't own your vote in the first place. Somebody voting for third party is neither one way or the other for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. There is a reason why Donald Trump is trying to earn libertarians' votes, because he knows that he needs more people on his side. This is the thing: is in past years, people said that libertarians voting libertarian was a vote against Trump, but it was also then people when in 2016 people said a vote for libertarian was a vote against Hillary Clinton when she lost. It's like I didn't know that the libertarians in the Libertarian Party have that much power, and they really they kind of do when you're looking again like third parties do have that power when you're looking at how much Trump is trying to court the libertarian vote. But yes, as you guys have pointed out in the chat, Kyle did do he did some backtracking later on that day, right? So he posted and said he basically an apology, said he had a very good conversation with the Trump team, and so he was back on Trump train and doing all that. So it was kind of it was interesting, but it is funny because the right will always say don't apologize, don't ever apologize because they'll never have grace for you. So after this, what's going on? Are people having grace for him? I haven't really seen that, but it's like, are they just now like he's now back to being like a hero of the right? I mean, I don't know, but I will tell you, I met Kyle at the conference. He's a nice kid. He had to go through something at a very young at a young age that he should have never had to go through in the first place. And he's still, I mean, he's got his dog and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure he's still got severe PTSD from going through that. And so he's 21 years old. What do you expect from a 21-year-old kid who's not really been around? He's going to make mistakes. But this movement, there's people online and being perpetually online, they will attack anybody who strays away, and that is a cult. If you're going to attack somebody simply for having a difference of opinion or difference agreement, or they're going to vote for somebody different than you, then that's a cult. And again, this is Alinsky rule number 12: pick a target, isolate the target, and make it hard for them to even go on and live. And that's what cults do. When somebody leaves the cult, people that leave the cult get attacked more by the cult than just naysayers and people that are against them. And the reason why they the reason why they attack people that leave the cult more than they attack anybody else, it's really to show other cult members the power that they have. It's to show other cult members, hey, it's basically a threat to the other people that are still in the cult. If you leave, this is what happens to you. If you don't want this to happen, you will never leave. And so it was very cultish behavior, and thankfully I saw a lot of people were calling out that type of behavior. Because look, don't attack the kid. Explain to him, have a conversation with him as to why he's wrong. If you think he's wrong in what he's doing, have the conversation with him. Don't just like cancel him, attack him online. Try to win his vote over. Because once you attack somebody like that, it's a lot harder to get people over. And guess what? The other side can also say, you see what happens? You see how they treat people that they were once associated with them? I mean, I do that with the left. When people even start talking to me or start talking to other people on the right, guess what? When the left attacks them for being friendly to us, guess what we do? We say, we go, look, see, this is what happens if you stray even one iota from the left's full ideals, from the woke ideology, then you are now considered a Nazi to them. So welcome to being a Nazi with the rest of us, and it's usually going to push people in the other direction, not bring people into your cause. So that was that. Another ruling that I wanted to just highlight. We'll see what happens and go further with this. But this is, and I don't want to talk too much about this one actually because it's on YouTube. So, Josie's right. This needs to go to the court, but apparently the Vermont Supreme Court rules that families cannot sue a child's school district after their 6-year-old was given a COVID-19 injection without their consent. This is a crazy story too. So, child goes to school. Parents did not want their child to get vaccinated, but the child goes to school. The clinical workers gave their child 1 dose of the Pfizer vaccine after the child was mistakenly given a name tag reading the name of another student. The child verbally protested, saying, "Dad said no." The ruling reads, the court ruled that the state and the school officials involved in the matter are protected under the Public Readiness and Emergency, so the PrEP Act. So basically, your parents' rights go out the window if they enact the PrEP Act. So understand that even if it wasn't a quote mistake and the school just said, no, you're going to get this anyways. I think you should get this. It's our policy that everybody has this. So you are going to take this. Then that gives the school the ability to give your child any medical care. Think about this. That gives your child the right, that gives your school the right to give any medical care to your child. This is like the pathway of taking away your parental rights. It's crazy. And no, and you know what they say, it's like if you're willing, if they can take away your rights in an emergency, they will create an emergency in order to take away your rights. Like, and this is kind of what you're saying. And honestly, you create an next thing you know, they're going to say, oh, gun violence is an emergency. We need to take away your right to the Second Amendment because, you can't, it's an emergency. There's too much of it going on. So now it's an emergency, and they will try that. Watch. They'll say, you know what? Speech is violence, and so your free speech rights need to be taken away because it's an emergency because it's harming people. They'll try it. We've seen it already started to happen with journalists. We've seen journalists being jailed by the administration basically because they're saying you violated the law in some way or another. Your free speech doesn't exist because of basically emergency in most situations where journalists have protections anyways. So we've seen it. We've already started to see the First Amendment being them using the same type of language. But think about like if they use the Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizure. No, we have all this going on here. We've heard that you have, red flag laws. Think about it. Red flag laws is a great example of using emergency. So if it's an emergency to again end the Second Amendment, then they can also use that same emergency power to then come in and execute red flag laws. Into your house. What is it? The Third Amendment. Most people don't even know the Third Amendment. If you guys know, I'm impressed. But it says the government can't quarter soldiers in your house. So, which was amazing because they did that during COVID. Now it's not kind of the same but if soldiers didn't want to pay their rent, and they suspended the need for people to pay their rent during COVID, forced landlords to keep people in their, like, forced landlords to not be allowed to evict people during COVID. Some of those people were soldiers, so it was a violation of the Third Amendment, but it was done under under emergency authorizations. I think they got shot down in the courts, though. But just think, if they would have let it go, then it would have it would have been, again, just another way for them to take our rights. So this is crazy, though. Josie's right. This absolutely needs to go to the big Supreme Court, the one in DC, because this should never be able to happen, and they should absolutely be allowed to sue their school districts for harming their child or what they perceive to be harm of their child. They should be able to sue simply for giving medical treatment without their permission. Because again, what happens next when they say, we're going to give your child puberty blockers without your consent because, maybe it's because we can, because you're not doing it and it's an emergency. It's not. Yep, Ronnie, you're absolutely right. The Patriot Act is probably the best example of this period because after 9/11, people were so scared and wanted to be protected. They wanted the government to protect them, and so they were willing to give up their Fourth Amendment rights. And actually, that's a great example of giving up your Fourth Amendment right. They can now go in and listen to your conversations. They can listen to your phone. So that's actually, that is the example of your Fourth Amendment. They don't, warrantless spying, the FISA warrant, and they just re-upped it, the warrantless spying. Once the government gets the ability to do something, they never give it back. There's nothing more. There's a phrase. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government policy. So they only take it and they never give it back. You have to fight to get it back. That's really what it is. You have to fight to get it back. Okay. Last kind of, I guess, short story. I kind of wanted. It's in the main topics though. I don't know. I'm not gonna go too deep into this. I don't know if you all saw the Joe Rogan special this weekend. I watched some of it yesterday. I was so tired from staying up all night on Saturday and then getting back yesterday morning, though. When I was watching it, I was falling asleep. It was funny. I wasn't falling asleep because it wasn't funny. Don't take it that way, because I did actually think it was pretty funny what I saw, but I was exhausted. But I saw this headline from the New York Post, and it says, Joe Rogan mocks trans people, COVID vaccine in new Netflix special. I don't know why they put it like that. And now I hope if I play this, it doesn't get me a copyright strike. I think it's fair use. But I might just have to remove the sound for copyright. So listen to this.
To be real clear, I believe in trans people because I think the world is strange and nature is strange. And I think nature can throw you a curveball and you believe you're in the wrong body. And I fully support your right as an adult to do whatever you want that makes you happy. I believe in freedom and I believe in love. But I also believe in crazy people. And here's the thing, that somehow or another, that got left out of the equation. All of a sudden, crazy people just went away like the flu during COVID. Like, oh, it just got absorbed in the numbers. Suddenly, every man in a dress is stunning and brave. It's like, trans women are women. How about most? How about almost all? You gotta leave room for crazy. Listen, I'm sorry if it's taking me a while to adjust, but all my life, if there was a movie about a killer, he was way crazier if he wore a dress. Psycho! He dresses like his mom, stabs ladies in the shower, Silence of the Lambs, and puts the lotion in the basket. Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf was dressed like a fucking lady. I'm not prejudiced. I like to look at men in dresses like I look at everything else on an individual basis. Mrs. Doubtfire seems like a lovely human, all right? I'm open-minded. I just want to know what happened. It's almost like a pervert wizard waved a magic spell in the whole world. Like, with a wave of this wand, you can walk to the women's locker room with a hard cock, and anybody who complains is a Nazi. Abracadabra! And it just worked. And everyone just accepts this new reality, and it's fucking weird. I just think we need standards. You can't just put lipstick on, now you can shit in the women's room. Like, we need some kind of standard.
Okay, can somebody please explain to me this, like I'm 12, like I'm 5, how this is transphobic in any meaningful way? I don't see it. I don't see this at all. Especially when he says, like, he says, I believe in trans people. I believe that the world throws you a curveball. I would say gender dysphoria is quite the curveball that you're pretty much born with. Yes. He's not calling trans people crazy. He says, I fully support your right as an adult to do what makes you happy. He even gave it up like I would even say that a lot of people on the right were probably even holding back a little bit when he says, trans women are women. Well, how about most? Like, I don't even say trans women are women. I say trans women are males with gender dysphoria, right? So, trans women are males. He's even willing to give that benefit of the doubt, at least for this show, and say, how about most? How about almost all? That's actually more of a leftist statement. He's just saying you got to give room for crazy, which makes sense because what we're seeing right now is so many people, crazy people, wanting to utilize self-ID and self-ID laws to perpetuate harm on women. The crazy people actually hurt actual trans people more than anybody else. So I clearly think that if you are looking at Joe Rogan and whoever wrote this for the New York Post, this again is transphobia of low expectations. Again, right? You think that, like, you're literally saying that him calling out the bad people perpetuating harm again against the trans community and saying that he's mocking trans people. No. It's the same thing. Think of it like when Florida passes a law that says gives the death penalty to pedophiles, and then the LGBTQ I'm going to say the queer community. The queer community comes out and says this is homophobic. Who's the one that has a bad who's the one that's associated with pedophiles, with homophobia and gay people? It's the queer community. Not the person saying that we should, that the death penalty should go towards pedophiles. It's only because pedophiles are mostly straight and heterosexual, or heterosexual males. Mostly. Well, and so to say that it's going to it's homophobic is actually the opposite of what you want to mean. It's like it's a self-own. To say, for the New York Post to say that this statement is mocking trans people is quite asinine to me, and it in and of itself would be transphobia. Again, trans people you can make fun of trans people all day. We are not above jokes. In fact, most of the jokes are funny. I thought that was funny. You saw me laughing. It's a good one. No, Lux, you have you have it wrong. So Lux says, "Wait, I thought you didn't agree with calling it the queer community, but you're doing it here because it's easier, which is why we all do it. Maybe stop the criticism." No. The LGBT community and the queer community are different. The queer community doesn't believe in the LGBT community because they don't believe in they believe in postmodernism, who don't believe in biological sex. They don't believe in absolute truths. Queer theory is built on postmodern neo-Marxism, and that is why I separate LGBT people, and the T actually stands for transsexual. It's not the same as queer. So when I say the queer community, it's talking about progressive leftists who don't even have to be gay. They just want to fit in that box of being queer. They have a personality, not necessarily a sexuality or gender dysphoria to transition. LGBT and queer are absolutely not the same thing. And so when I say it, I'm saying it as a meaning to mean to distinctly make a difference. I don't say LGBTQ for a reason, because the Q has nothing to do with the other two, the rest of it. The Q by definition is not associated with the LGBT. The LGBT are generally your conservative gays at this point. Because how can you believe in somebody being lesbian or gay when you don't even believe that you have to be a biological female that likes other females to be a lesbian? Or you believe that it's somehow transphobic to be a lesbian and not want to date trans people because they aren't biologically male. Listen, there's a huge difference. Like, you can't be like this is what makes no sense. You can't be a non-binary lesbian. That makes no sense. Lesbian would either mean, if under your definition, would be women liking women. Women, it has a distinct definition though, right? Women are adult human females who like other adult human females. So unless you believe in the sex binary, male and female, and male, and female being a woman being an adult human female, then you can't, like, unless you believe in that stuff, you can't believe it. And most in the LGBT community, what they fought for was simply to get married and have equal rights to everybody else. And once they got that, they moved on. And then the queer community came in and sucked up all the air, and now they're harming. They are actively the ones harming. They're the ones pushing self-ID. They're the ones that are pushing the crazy, as Joe Rogan puts it. That's what they're pushing. So yeah, I don't use it because it's easier. I use it because it's different. I use it because the communities aren't the same. We don't have a community. We don't even have a trans community, okay? Think about it this way. You have transgender, which means anything you want it to be. Anything that you want, it's this umbrella term that means absolutely nothing because it can stand for anything you want it to be, so it stands for nothing. And then you have transsexual, who are people with actual gender dysphoria who transition to deal with that gender dysphoria. And again, transsexuals are generally, we live within a binary world. We live in the male-female binary. We're not non-binary. We live within the binary. So again, we say trans, there is no trans community. There may be the transgender community, which is actually under the queer community, and then you have, which is based in postmodernism again, and then you have the transsexual community, which actually aligns closer to the LGBT community. Even though it's still an identity, there's some ambiguity that goes on when it. There's some ambiguity that goes on when you talk about one being an identity and one being your sexual preference or your sexuality. However, it goes into like what relationships. If I'm in a relationship with a woman, that's a heterosexual relationship, but to the outside world, it probably appears to be a lesbian relationship, even though it's not technically. Same with if I'm in a relationship with a man, that is a homosexual relationship, but to the outside world, it looks like a heterosexual relationship. So perception and reality get mixed in a little bit there in our conflicting in the ways we talk about this stuff. But I digress. That's a little bit of a rant we're going with there. So yeah, which actually, thanks for kind of bringing this up, because now we're going to talk about the big story of the weekend is biological males competing in women's boxing in the Olympics. Listen, there's a little bit to be said about this situation. So if you haven't heard, again, if you're not perpetually online or you haven't been paying attention, but this has kind of been everywhere this weekend. So everybody should already know there are 2 biological males who competed in the female division in the Olympics. They are not trans. They are not trans people whatsoever. Not transsexual, not transgender, not trans. It's been kind of interesting conversation because this whole thing is has been being put onto the trans community to insult the trans community and again show bad faith, which is why it's important to actually note that this is not a trans situation, because honestly, I won't lie, in a lot of ways I do feel bad for both of these competitors in a sense. Do I think that they should be allowed to compete in female sports right off the bat? I'm going to tell you no. The reason I feel bad is they have a DSD condition, a disorder of sexual development, which is also known as intersex. And it's important, like I said, I kind of feel because what's it like growing up thinking your entire life that you were born female because you were assigned, like, you're observed as being female at birth, because with DSD conditions, depending on the condition, genitals don't form, and they actually can appear to be very much of the opposite sex. However, internal organs, like for both of them, I'm assuming both have internal testicles, which produce testosterone, very similar to that of a male. Now, honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, I appreciate Redux Magazine for their coverage of this. A lot of people on the left will call them a complete transphobic magazine, but they had I don't necessarily believe that. I think that they are doing a lot of good work over at Redux, just FYI. But I will say they had the best coverage of this from the very beginning. They were the ones that broke the story before any other major media group, before there's any competition. Redux was the only one that had an article out about them, and then everybody else was newsjacking from Redux. So what happened last year at the World Championship, both people were disqualified, and they said because they had XY chromosomes. They were tested, had XY chromosomes and all that. So then they came back and they said, again, International Boxing Association releases an 11th-hour statement which establishes that it was not eligible to compete in women's boxing, along with Taiwan's Ling Yuting had been previously disqualified from the 2023 Women's Boxing Championship after it was determined they had an unfair advantage over female boxers. People were trying to say that it was just because they had unnaturally high testosterone. But it says, and while supporters and National Olympic Committee claimed this was simply because they had naturally high testosterone, the IBA put this myth to bed to confirm and said they had not conducted a testosterone level on either of them. Instead, they said that both had been disqualified after separate medical tests was conducted, which established they were not eligible to participate in women's boxing. Crucially, they define a woman as an individual with XX chromosomes. The gender tests they conducted on boxers do not measure hormone level, but determines whether they meet definition of a woman as per eligibility. Neither one did, which means they have XY chromosomes. So, and again, they were very clear, and I do appreciate this. Again, Redux will be clear for the final time. Neither are believed to be transgender. Instead, they're believed to have they impacted by difference of sexual development and medical condition, which results in abnormal development of secondary sex characteristics. For example, some may have XY chromosomes but not develop a penis and uterus. Thus, they are marked as female when they are born and undergo a substantial part of their lives knowing they're biological female. The part where like I said, they have an unfair advantage. Let's see. I'll pull up my tweet on this. I was responding to this. So I'm not an expert in DSD conditions, and I think this is quite obvious. This is a very complicated subject matter. I have seen some doctors online, some people that have that are very well versed in these types of conditions online, and so I raised this question because they either have 46XY or PAIS, which is I forget what that stands for, but it means that they produce testosterone, but their body doesn't actually absorb the testosterone or doesn't use the testosterone that it uses. So I asked the question though, because there is also such thing as 46XX, which produces higher levels of testosterone, even though they have 2X chromosomes. They are also in intersex condition, would also have an unfair advantage. Which may even be similar to the ranges of 46XY. So 46XX and 46XY may have similar levels of testosterone, but I don't know. I don't know how much it's been studied, and I'm still looking for some. So I was still on some of the. We just don't know. I don't know. I would like to see some of the data on some of this to see would it be fair for somebody with a 46XX to compete in female boxing, even though they produce a higher level of testosterone than an average female. I don't know. I think that's a conversation that we need to be having, and I think that this is I think that the solution here really is that the IOC needed to do their own genetic testing on all athletes, not just who they think maybe. So not discriminate based on looks or anything like that, but all athletes should be undergoing this to see if they fall into one of these categories. Intersex people get the conversation hasn't been there for a very long time because again, it's a very small population of people and there's no way to like self-ID into the category. It's very much just being born this way and it's very small. So you don't have a lot of them trying to compete in sports and everything like that. But I do have a hunch that one of the reasons why this person was allowed to compete in the Olympics is because earlier this year in February, Amon was basically put up as a poster child for UNICEF as a Algerian boxer, right? Which, yeah, Reuters had a good breakdown. But here's the thing. I think I saw somebody post it and they were correcting their record and said so I was mistaken. These are not trans athletes. They are with intersex conditions. And they actually said the first thing that should have tipped me off was an Algerian trans person, because that was the whole question. I'm trying to make people think about this for a second is there are pictures of them as a child. There's also the fact that in Algeria, it is illegal to be homosexual and trans. So to have somebody from Algeria, a trans person from Algeria, being posted up as an international hero on the international stage and getting their country a lot of attention. Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think that Algeria is going to allow somebody to basically be trans and compete and be the representation for their country when it's illegal there. I've seen people say that, this is actually something that used to happen a long time ago, is people like this would be sought after because they have because they of their condition, they would be able to compete and win. And this is before they were even doing genetic testing. But that's things like the IOC stopped their genetic testing in the early 90s. They should be setting the rules, especially for intersex stuff. They should be setting the rules. Like, I get it. They started the IOC, if you remember, because of well, and this is what was kind of confusing too, is because if there was trans people competing in these games, we would have known months ago, because it would have been an international controversy, just like it was with Laura Hubbard in the last election, or the last Olympics. But there was nothing. There was nothing leading up to this, and it was even said so much that there are no trans women. I'm going to say trans women competing in these Olympics, period. There's no trans women competing in these Olympics. It was said that by the Daily Mail. And so I took that, and then people started saying, well, what's this? What's this? What's this? I'm like, well, wait a second. Now we're talking about intersex conditions, and this is new information. I'm just showing you what the Daily Mail reported, the day prior. So, but when Laura Hubbard competed, it changed the trajectory of the IOC in general. The IOC had to go back and look at their policies. And so instead of taking a stand themselves and doing, the right thing, and barring males from female sports, they said, we're going to look at the we're going to allow each individual discipline to decide what their rules are. So we're going to go off of the top organizations in those disciplines. But here's where the controversy comes in. The International Boxing Association did decide. They did decide. They said no. But the IOC has decided to discredit what the has decided to discredit what the IBA has said in terms of their rules and everything like that, because apparently they have a history of I don't know what their history is with there's a history there, something that they said they're not accurate and all this stuff. So they basically were like, we're not even going to take their opinion. We're just going to have our own opinion on this matter. But I do believe that there was something else came out. So let me see. So this happened today. You can see, I'm not going to play this, but the highlights from this International Boxing Association held a press conference today about the two boxers. The highlights are both boxers were initially subjected to chromosomal tests by an independent laboratory in Istanbul after the IBA received complaints from coaches and competitors during the 2022 Women's World Boxing Championship. Both boxers were tested in India again during the 2023 International Boxing to clarify and confirm prior results. Both boxers were found to have XY chromosomes. They were both informed of the results. Both boxers were given the opportunity to appeal the findings. Lin Yuting did not appeal, which is not an admission, but you would think that you would appeal if you accepted that if you didn't believe it. And then the other appealed the decision, and then afterwards withdrew the appeal. Why would you withdraw the appeal? Why don't you just let the appeal go through? Doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest. The next, so now there's a statement by the Algerian boxer to call to an end to bullying athletes after being greatly affected by the scrutiny she has faced over misconceptions about her gender. It wasn't an easy thing to go through at all. It was something that harms human dignity. Look, like I said, I feel for you. I feel for anybody who lives their life thinking that they are a biological female and then as an adult is told that's not the case. Genetic testing shows that that's not the case. And a lot of people would say, well, what about, you would think that the person would know by puberty, right? That's not always the case. I did read that a lot of times when people learn that they have an intersex disorder like this, they actually don't know until they're actually trying to conceive for children. Also, this is Algeria. I don't know the education level over there. I don't know what they teach via what's about sex ed. It's probably not a lot. I'm pretty sure they don't teach, even young girls about what happens when you have a period and stuff, and that you should be getting it and all this stuff. So there's probably some lack of education around the matter that she probably never did know. She probably never knew until now. But the thing about it now is, yeah, I understand it hurts to be told what's true. But also the fact that that you have a biological advantage by the way of being biologically male, that you should also not compete. You should also withdraw yourself from the competition. I get that sucks. That would suck for anybody, whether it's via injury, anything. But you don't have a right to compete in female sports because you were born a biological male. And I don't, people calling the people calling you a man and all this stuff. I don't like that because it's not the same. You were born differently. It may be technically true, but it's not the life you've lived at all, and to no fault of your own. I mean, obviously people will call me a man because I chose to actually transition. I have gender dysphoria. I could have chose not to transition and tried to deal with it in other ways, but this was the best way for me to deal with it. But I made that choice. She didn't make that choice. So I think it's a little bit unfair. But again, it's hard to have a lot of sympathy for somebody who knows that they are biologically male now and decides to still compete after knowing that they could actually harm, possibly kill a woman in one of the in boxing of all sports. Yeah, and you said Brittany Griner's another one. Let me see. No, it's not Brittany Griner. We don't know about Brittany Griner. That's the thing. Nothing's ever happened with Brittany Griner. I think it's questionable whether Brittany Griner has a intersex condition. We don't know. But I actually the other one that comes to mind, and this has been in the news before, is Caster Cinema. I forget what it is. Caster was again a runner who was removed and had their medals stripped because of an intersex condition. Had their medals stripped. So, look, I think that people should you should have dignity. I know it's probably rough to want to, for people to ask you to drop out of a sport that you've been doing for so long, just in over something a disorder that you may have just found out about. But I'm sorry, life's not always fair. I know you didn't choose this for yourself, but you are choosing to compete. So you should have, people should have more dignity. I don't think it harms human dignity to say that. Okay. And Lux, automatically assuming the IBA is being honest. I that's why I kind of said that we don't know. This is why the IOC actually needs to do. This is why the IOC needs to do their own testing, because the only reason why the IOC actually said that they were not allowed to compete was because their passport said female. And yes, in a country where you can't change your passport because it's a conservative country, but in the US you can change your passport. So if you're going off passports in boxing, does that mean like anybody off the street, any man off the street can just go and change their passport in the US to female and then go compete? I don't think that's the way to do it. The IOC doesn't know. That's the problem. The IOC doesn't know. So the only thing we can go off of is the IBA's decision. So I think, again, we need to the IOC needs to bring back their testing. But I think it is pretty clear that she's got some level of advantage there. I don't know. But I think that, or they should have continued to appeal the decision. They said it was a third party that actually that did the tests. No, we can't go off of what she says. That's retarded. Because has she ever had a genetic test done? I doubt, because she was born thinking she was female. No, the IOC needs to do their testing. No, if just based on what you were born as doesn't mean you don't have a DSD condition. And again, why did she not continue with the appeal? Why did neither one of them follow through with appealing the decision? Why did they not show their own testing to appeal the decision? If you're not going to appeal the decision, you're not allowed to fight, and you're not allowed to box in the IBA, you shouldn't be allowed to box in the Olympics either. So that's that. Last story, and we only got a couple minutes, so we'll again do like we always do at the end of the show and kind of go speed through some of these things. If you were paying attention this morning, the market crashed this morning, and it stayed down through the day. Well, I didn't know until I actually read up a little bit. So the Federal Reserve on Friday, there was a poor jobs number that came out on Friday, and around globally, a couple banks around the country lowered interest rates to try to stop a market fallout. The Federal Reserve did not do this. And as I said onto Spike Cohen, who was talking about the corrections, like market corrections, the Great Depression was a massive correction because we were not in reality. He says it better than I do. Was the Great Recession of 2008 was also the same. I mean, the market adjusting to reality, and we are far off from reality. So what happens is we have been in a hidden recession at least 2021. The people knew it. I mean, we knew it because of inflation, right? We've been paying so much more we've been paying a ton at the grocery store. We've seen the effects of inflation. The stock market doesn't necessarily tell the story of what's happened on ground because it can be artificially inflated by that, the Fed, the interest rates that the Fed has, it can also be artificially inflated by, hedge funds and other asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard and stuff like that. That they artificially inflate the market, and that keeps things looking good and on the up. Well, today the bottom fell out, and this really just shows that the Federal Reserve is supposed to be there to raise and lower interest rates and print money based on to keep inflation low, to hedge inflation, and to make sure that we don't have these wild we don't fall into another Great Depression. But all they do is make the depressions and recessions worse rather than letting the market actually do its thing. So it is time to end the Federal Reserve. Because they're not very good at what they do anyways. They're supposed to stop this from happening, supposed to keep it kind of on a nice trajectory up. But then what ends up happening is we get these wild swings. We get these ginormous growth years, and then we have these very low years like we had in 2008 and in the Great Depression. We had these wild swings. Some wild swings. Whereas if you actually let the market do its thing, without the Fed determining like interest rates and everything like that, then guess what? We wouldn't have the wild swings. We want our markets wouldn't be artificially inflated. So it's time to end the Federal. I mean, did you know that the Federal Reserve they don't even report to they are a private organization that runs our monetary system, and they can do what they want. The president, nor Congress, nor none of them have control over the Federal Reserve. I think the Federal Reserve just reports their stuff to the Treasury Department. So it's time to end the Fed. But it's gonna be some we got some rough years ahead. Okay, let's just say that. And with that, I mean, we talk about what could be ahead. Let's see, if you were wondering what Kamala Harris is going to do about this, let's go to her website and see what her policy positions are. Maybe in here. Okay, this is who she is. Let's see. Again, more about what she's done in her career. Maybe it's in frequently asked questions. No. So, I guess the Harris campaign doesn't want to tell you what their policy positions are. This is the first time. Let's talk about this. And this is the whole point of me doing this. This is the first time I've ever seen a political campaign of any level not directly list their policy positions on their websites. How are you supposed to vote for them without knowing what they stand for? We can go by their record and what they've done in the past, but they don't want us to do that. I guess she wasn't the borders are, right? They will try to memory hole everything that she's done in her policies, but she won't tell us. She won't clarify what her policies are. You're not voting for Kamala Harris. You're voting for they're trying to get you to vote against Trump. That's it. You're not voting for a person. You're voting for the puppet. But we do know a little bit about what she will do. Bro, no. Listen, this is funny. This is funny. Blah, blah, blah. Dems will support trans people. Republicans won't. Bro, you don't even know Republicans if you think that. I've been around a lot of Republicans my entire life. Guess what? We're good. Adults can do what they want with their bodies. That's what Every single person tells me. I work with state legislators across the country. I was literally at a conference last weekend with a bunch of state legislators. I believe all of them were, well, they were either libertarian or I don't know if there was any libertarians there. They were all they were all probably more conservative. Most of them were Republicans. I actually had a good conversation with some of the people in Louisiana that I've worked. I now have multiple legislators that I can contact in Louisiana to work on bills, and I absolutely adore all of them. This year, I mean, Trump is good friends with Caitlyn Jenner. They removed their opposition to gay marriage out of the Republican platform. Democrats want to castrate children, and actually, that's a good point. Let's actually look at this story, because this is what's on the ballot. Let me see. Oh shit. This actually is what's on the ballot. Close. Okay. Probably the person that's been getting the most talk is Josh Shapiro for the VP list. Collaborated with the trans lobby to target counselors who don't transition children. Basically, what's on the ballot is they are going to ban exploratory therapy. They are looking to ban anything other than gender affirming or gender affirming care. That's on the ballot. That is what's on the ballot. I'm not worried about conservatives trying to take anything away from adults. They can't do it. You have to pass everything with a 60% majority in the Senate anyways. You're not going to be able to get that to pass any bans. And if they did, the Supreme Court would probably shoot it down. I'm pretty confident that the Supreme Court's going to shoot that down. But they are going to ban what they call conversion therapy in any legislation. They've led charges to investigate anybody, and I have a lot of friends that work with Therapy First, who they have the utmost, and we showed the video here a couple months ago of a trans activist going into a therapist office, and I think it was one of the ones with Therapy First, who they were doing exactly what I would want my therapist to do, questioning, trying to get me to think about stuff. Still supporting trans people, but trying to make sure that this is actually what it is before they just diagnose you with gender dysphoria. That's what they're trying to ban here. They're trying to ban anything other than affirming, which if you're going to ban anything but affirming, then why even have a therapist involved in the first place if you're forced to affirm? That doesn't make any sense. That's what's on the ballot. Let's see. And he's also, let's talk about Josh Shapiro here for a second. He's also now accused of giving legal advice to a senior aide who was accused of sexual harassment while he was publicly claiming to be investigating him. Seems like a weird situation. Hey, we're investigating you. Hey, you should say this, this, and this, and clear this stuff up while you can, because this is what we're finding. Crazy. There's another thing I wanted to show y'all. This was kind of funny. Somebody showed this to me the other day. If you go into Google Translate and it says Finnish to English. So if you go in and look for Finnish and you type in, let me see, come on. Let me see. I just died. Oh, that is why, actually. Oh, I'm in the wrong computer. So even Google Translate thinks Kamala is horrible. Kind of funny. Kind of funny. Yeah. And if you haven't seen this story, I'm not going to run this story, but just let you know. Actually, no, we're going to run this one. This story, go look at Steve Baker's this video. Literally in the UK, they'll take you to jail for posting something on social media. It's getting so Orwellian that you can't even just speak your mind on social media. They don't even believe in free speech. But here's what we do know that she will do in her first 100 days is try to start a civil war by confiscating guns. And this is what she said.
Adding to your gun control agenda? Yeah, I think it's a great idea. But I mean, listen, I don't think we lack for great ideas. As I've said many times, we've been having great ideas for decades. The problem is that Congress has not had the courage to act. And that is why, from the beginning, I have said my agenda includes attempting to get Congress to act. But if they don't within the first 100 days of my administration, I'm going to take executive action.
That'd be a violation of the Second Amendment. You try to take any executive action, you try to send anybody that basically saying you want to send people door to door to do guns confiscation like they did in Australia. That's not going to go over well. Nope. Even when they did the assault weapons ban in the early 90s, people were grandfathered in. Like, you can't just go door to door and take people's guns. That's not going to happen when you have more guns in this country than you have people. You also have to have police officers that are willing to stack on a door and kick the door in and go take those guns. It's not going to happen. But it is a good way to start. Turn the cold Civil War into a hot one. But with that, y'all, I say this every time. Well, first, please click that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, we stream this on Twitter and YouTube and Rumble. Follow across all those platforms. I am less than 200 followers away from 20,000 on Twitter. Let's see if we can get me there. I would love that to be at 20,000. That'd be cool. So if you haven't already, click that like and subscribe button. Go follow me across all social media platforms. That also includes Instagram and everywhere else. I thank you for joining, and I will see you next time.